All right, so I am Jim Tierney, president of Digital Anarchy, and I'm going to talk a little bit about a music video that we produced for a gal named Angela LaFlamme. Just talking about the storyboard concept that we had for it, the shots that we did, and a little bit about the editing. And then I'll also talk a little bit about Digital Anarchy's plugins for doing skin retouching and the flickering video. So this is I'll play a little bit of the video right off the bat, just to give you an idea of what the final output was. All right, so that gives you kind of an idea of what the music video was, or is, or became. And what I'm going to start off with is just talking about how we concepted this. And so the first thing you want to do when you're thinking about doing a music video is put together a storyboard for it. And the storyboard doesn't have to be a big, complex thing. You can see what we've got going on here with just having here's our opening, here's our first verse, here's another second part of the first verse. Just going through and thinking about visually, what do we want to have for this video? So when we go shoot it, we can tell the director of photography, here's an image, here's what we're going for, and let's shoot that. And you can use all sorts of things. You can do basic sketches, you can grab pictures off the internet. This is an image from a Lana Del Rey video. You can use generative AI to generate ideas for it. It's actually a pretty good use of generative AI. I mean, the fact that the trumpeter down here only has one leg doesn't matter in the case of a storyboard. It's all good. You're just getting ideas and trying to create a visual image of what the shot's going to look like. And so there's a variety of different shots here. And so now that we've got that, we can tell the director of photography, this is what we're going to do, and go out and shoot it. And one of the fun things about the process is finding a venue that's going to match up with what your vision is. And we're based in San Francisco, so everything was shot in San Francisco. And we ended up finding this hole in the wall on Mission Street in San Francisco, which when you walk in, it's like this old French barn, bohemian barn on the inside with all these crazy paintings and other stuff and antique furniture. And it was perfect for the vibe that Angela wanted for her video, because her whole jam is sort of mid-century singer, but mashed up with more modern takes, like she does some great covers of Tom Waits, and of course does her own work, but it's all this kind of like speakeasy type of vibe. And so we wanted a venue that fit that, and we found it. And then you go out and shoot it. And so you can see over here, this is sort of, these are a bunch of the different shots. And if you go back to the storyboard, we have our close-up, we have our dancers, we have, her sitting on a couch. And again, this is not going to be perfect to exactly what you're going to shoot. You're going to shoot something a little bit different, but you want a visual image to say, hey, this is what's in my head. And then once you get into actually shooting it, you dial in exactly what you want. So, the opening shot is, this. We've got multiple takes of her for the opening, got multiple takes of the dancers, and all this is before color correction, so we're going to color correct this once we pull it into Premiere. And right now it looks super flat because it's coming out of a high-end Sony camera, and then you apply a LUT to it, that makes it pop, and then you do the additional color correction on top of that. And then you apply any effects on top of that. So we're going to talk about that process. But this is what we came out with in terms of like, again, thinking through the storyboard. Here's our shot of her on the couch, and that's what it ended up looking like actually for the shoot. So then once you have your shots, it really comes down to trying to figure out how those shots fit with the music. How do you do the editing? Do you do a bunch of shortcuts? Do you have a really fast-moving clip where you're doing like a bunch of cuts? Or do you have a little bit more slower piece where you want to sit on top on a shot for a little bit? And you'll notice that if I go back to the video itself, which I guess I closed, the song itself starts out kind of slow, and then the energy of the song picks up. And you'll notice that as I scrub through this, the shots are taking a little bit longer, but then they start to really speed up in terms of like doing a lot more rapid cuts, with the shots being on screen for a shorter amount of time. And you can kind of see that in Premiere, which is what we're in right now. We've got a bunch of longer things, and then as we start getting further in, you can start seeing these shots are much shorter. And we're just cutting on like, 2 beats or 4 beats or like whatever, just to like show her singing like a few words and then cut to something else. And so that's where the editing process comes in, and you really have to think about like how you want to piece. You have all these shots, how do we now piece that together to tell a story about the song? Because that's really what it's all about, is telling stories. That's why she writes the songs. It's basically a song's about a fucked up relationship, and which we all kind of understand, but one of the fun things that we did, the song is called One Step Forward, and the chorus is 1 step forward, 2 steps back, and we had to think about like how do we visually represent that. And so we hired a couple tango dancers to come in and like do that part of it, and kind of did like several takes of them doing different kind of versions of the dance, and was able to kind of pull that into the video to kind of represent this idea of this dance that we all do when in a relationship, and how we get closer, how we get farther away, and it worked really well actually. So that's kind of like the thinking behind the editing process. As far as the effects go, if I click on some of these, let's come over to, we can use this one. Now if we come over to the effects control, you can see that we have Lumetri applied to this. If I turn that off, now it goes super flat, right? In Premiere, it's Lumetri color. If you're in Resolve, it's a different thing. If you're in Final Cut Pro, it's a different thing, but it's all the same idea, just a different tool within each program, right? And so we turn on Lumetri. The first step is selecting a LUT. If I set that on, it just goes flat again, but as soon as I select the correct LUT, that kind of snaps the color space into the right color space, and now you can start color grading on top of that.